You a logistics officer?" Ortiz laughed, shaking his head. "You can't hit the sky, let alone 4,000 meters." The desert went silent. Captain Dana Whitford stepped forward, calm, unarmed except for a single round in her pocket. 13 elite snipers had already failed, every one of them missing the target at Sage Ridge range. She knelt, loaded her rifle, and whispered, "Wind's honest. People aren't—" One shot cracked across the valley. 3 seconds later, ping, a perfect hit. "Before we begin, tell us where are you watching from? And if you believe honor and courage still matter, help keep their legacy alive." The Nevada desert shimmered under a merciless sun. Heat waves rolled off the concrete pads of Sage Ridge proving grounds, blurring everything in sight. 13 snipers lay prone along the firing line, 13 chances to make history. Each man had trained for years, chasing the impossible, a confirmed hit at nearly 4,000 meters. Now, under the gaze of General Everett Sloan, they would try. One after another, rifles thundered. The echoes faded into dry air. Spotters called out results, miss, miss, miss. The target plate downrange stayed untouched, a tiny silver glint in the sun. Sloan's jaw tightened. He lowered his binoculars and muttered, "That's 13. The observers behind him shifted uneasily. "Any snipers left?" he asked, voice flat, dust swirling around his boots. No one answered. Even the wind seemed to hesitate. From the logistics tent, a calm female voice broke the silence. "Permission to try, sir." Heads turned immediately. A woman stepped out, Captain Dana Whitford. Her uniform was plain, sleeves rolled, a clipboard still tucked under her arm. She wasn't on the shooter list. Someone snorted. Master Sniper Caleb Ortiz crossed his arms. "Sir, she manages supply runs, not rifles." A few laughed quietly, tension breaking. Dana walked forward, unbothered. Each step was measured, boots pressing small prints into the dust. She stopped at the empty firing position, eyes on the target. "Captain," Sloan said carefully, "you understand this range is 4 kilometers. Wind shear, heat distortion, no spotter, no wind meter." She nodded once. "Understood, sir." He studied her for a moment. Something in her stillness stirred a faint memory. "Fine," he said finally. "1 round. Make it count." She set down her clipboard and knelt beside the waiting rifle. The weapon gleamed an AI Axe SR.338 La Pua, custom tuned for this test. The barrel shimmered from the heat. She ran her hand along the metal, checking every component by instinct. Ortiz muttered under his breath, "She's wasting everyone's time." Lieutenant Harper Knox smirked beside him. "This'll be over fast." Dana ignored them both. Through the scope, the desert bent like molten glass. Flags near the ridge leaned northeast, then trembled. She made quick adjustments on the elevation dial. The scope clicked softly, tiny, deliberate sounds. Then she reached into her cargo pocket and pulled out a small leather notebook. It wasn't standard issue. The pages were worn, corners dog-eared, filled with quick numbers and hand-sketched wind tables. She flipped once, then closed it. Her hand slid a single bullet from her pocket-polished brass, perfectly weighted. She loaded it, the bolt locking clean. The sound was sharp, final. Sloan's aide whispered, "Who is she?" Sloan didn't answer. He was watching her breathing, steady, controlled, not nervous, just quiet. The kind of calm you only earn when the world has already tried to kill you once. The chatter behind her faded. The air pressed still. Even Ortiz stopped smirking. Dana exhaled through her nose, eyes fixed on the heat shimmer downrange. Through the scope, the target wavered, shifting like a mirage. She didn't blink. She read the flicker of wind the way others read a map, every swirl, every pause. One correction left. A small twist on the dial, just 0.3 mils. Her pulse slowed. Her finger found the trigger but didn't pull. Timing mattered more than confidence. Sloan glanced toward the horizon, sweat running down his temple. 40 minutes left before the board would declare Project Meridian a failure. This shot was their last chance. "Captain Whitford," he said, Voice quieter now. You may fire when ready. She didn't respond. She was already ready. Her shoulders lowered by a fraction. Muscles relaxed. She waited not for stillness, but for rhythm. The wind pulsed once, twice, then steadied. Dana breathed in, held, and pulled the trigger. The rifle cracked, thunder rolling across the range. A single casing spun from the chamber, flashing in the light before falling to the dust. No one spoke. The bullet cut through air, invisible, slicing across 2.5 miles of heat and distance. 3 seconds passed, then ting. A faint metallic note carried back on the wind. Spotter lenses focused. Voices stunned. Impact. Someone whispered. Dead center. The silence broke. Ortiz stared through his scope, disbelief written across his face. Harper's grin vanished completely. Dana exhaled once, slow and quiet. She flicked the safety, set the rifle down, and removed her ear protection. Her expression didn't change. General Sloan walked forward, eyes locked on the target screen. He saw it himself, a perfect hole, clean through the center plate. No error, no luck, just precision. He turned to her. How did you calculate the drift without instruments? She met his eyes. You listen to the air long enough. It speaks. A pause hung between them. Sloan nodded slowly. That'll do. Captain. Behind him. The board observers were already murmuring. Dana picked up her notebook, brushed off the sand, and tucked it away. Sloane's voice carried again, this time softer. Who trained you? She hesitated. Different command. Long ago. He looked at her longer than necessary, as if searching his own memory. Something about her words, her tone familiar. But before he could ask, she was already walking back toward the tent. The range stayed silent, the air heavy with disbelief. No one laughed now. The shot had spoken for her. At the bench, the empty brass casing caught the light gleaming faint gold against the concrete. Sloan bent, picked it up, turning it in his hand, stamped at the base, W16. His breath caught. He knew that mark. War Deck, 2016. He straightened, eyes following her as she disappeared into the tent's shadow. The wind rose again, soft and cool this time. And for the first time that day, Sloan smiled. Find out who she really is, he told his aide quietly. The man nodded and hurried off. The general stayed there a moment longer, still holding the brass in his palm. The sun sank lower, long shadows crawling across the range. The heat finally broke, replaced by a strange calm. Somewhere beyond the hills, the wind shifted again, but not against her. And for the first time, the desert seemed to listen back. The sun was still high when General Sloan found her again. Dana Whitford sat alone at a metal table outside the logistics tent, a cup of cold coffee in front of her. She didn't look up when he approached. She knew his boots by the rhythm of his steps. Sloan set the spent brass casing on the table. It rolled once and stopped beside her notebook. War Deck, he said quietly. That's where I've seen that mark before. Dana's eyes flicked toward the casing, then away. Yes, sir. Her tone was calm, but her hands folded together, as if holding something back. He studied her for a long moment. You were there. I was, she answered. Sloan pulled out the chair opposite her. I remember that day, the outpost under fire. 3 of my men pinned down. Comms cut off. Dana's gaze stayed distant. We were monitoring you from a ridge 2 clicks out. Orders were to stay silent unless visibility hit 0. He leaned forward, and when it did, she exhaled. Slow. We made it loud again. Her eyes met his steady, unflinching. For 6 years, he'd believed a ghost unit saved them unknown operators. Never debriefed. Now the ghost had a face. And she was sitting across from him, quietly drinking cold coffee. Sloan lowered his voice. Your call sign, Kestrel 6. The name hit him like a memory buried too deep to forget. Kestrel, he repeated. You covered us from 2 miles out. You dropped every hostile who touched that ridge. Dana didn't deny it. That was the job. Sir, he looked down at the brass between them. You were pulled from active duty after Kabul, weren't you? Her silence was the answer. Why logistics? Captain, he asked softly. She hesitated before replying. I got tired of watching people die through a scope. Counting bodies doesn't make you precise, it just makes you lonely. Her words lingered in the dry air like dust. Sloane didn't argue. He'd seen that kind of fatigue before, the kind that metals couldn't fix. Still, there was something in her tone he couldn't ignore. You hit 3,980 meters today, he said. That wasn't just luck or practice. You read the air like a code. Dana shrugged. Air's honest. Sir, people aren't. That earned a faint smile from him. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a small silver coin. The Meridian insignia gleamed faintly in the light. You just saved my program, Sloane said, setting it beside the brass. And maybe a lot more than that. She eyed the coin but didn't touch it. I'm not here for symbols. It's not a symbol, Sloane said. It's an invitation. Dana finally looked up. His expression was serious, more command than persuasion. I'm reactivating a precision training group, Meridian Phase 1. You'll lead it? She shook her head slightly. I'm not teaching ghosts again. You won't be teaching ghosts, Sloane said. You'll be making sure no one else becomes one. The words landed heavier than he intended. Silence stretched. A truck rumbled somewhere near the airstrip, breaking the stillness. Dana finally said, If I accept, it's on my terms. Sloane nodded. Say them. No press, no cameras, no politics. We fail in shadows or not at all. He held her gaze. Agreed. She stood, picking up her notebook. Then I'll need a range, 5 recruits, and absolute silence. Sloane smiled faintly. You always did like silence, Captain. Silence keeps people alive, she said simply. Then she turned and walked toward the horizon, leaving both the coin and the brass casing on the table. Sloane watched her go, the wind tugging at her sleeves. Later that evening, the range was empty again. Only the target plate stood, gleaming faintly in the sunset. Ortiz walked across the field, still trying to process what had happened. He picked up the casing that Sloane had dropped earlier, turning it in his hand. She did that, he muttered. Without a spotter. A young recruit nearby said, You mean the supply officer? Ortiz smirked. Not anymore. He looked back at the horizon, where Dana's figure had disappeared hours ago. You just watched a legend walk out of retirement. The next morning, Dana's transfer orders came through. Her name was reassigned under Meridian Command Precision Unit Alpha. The approval signature, General Everett Sloane? By noon, she stood at the new range compound, 5 recruits waiting, each uncertain why they were chosen. One of them, Harper Knox, straightened nervously when she approached. Ma'am, we heard rumors. There are no rumors here, she said, cutting him off. There's work. You'll start when the wind shifts. They exchanged puzzled glances. She didn't explain. Sloane arrived later, clipboard in hand. Ortiz at his side, he said quietly. They think this is just another marksmanship course, Dana replied. Then let's make sure it isn't. She turned back to the recruits, eyes narrowing at their stance, the way they fidgeted. First lesson? She said. Stillness isn't about freezing, it's about control. Then she pointed toward the desert. Control that, and you'll live. Harper raised a brow. Control the desert? Ma'am. Dana almost smiled. No, control yourself when it lies to you. That silenced them faster than any drill command could. Sloane watched from a distance, recognizing something rare authority without volume. This wasn't training by the book. This was the kind that rewrote books. Meridian, he thought, had just found its edge. As the sun dipped low, Dana paced the firing line, watching every breath, every movement. She didn't shout once, and yet even the air seemed to obey her timing. When the last recruit lowered his rifle, she said simply, You all missed, but you learned what to listen for. "What's that?" Ma'am Harper asked. "The difference between silence and waiting." She replied. That night, while the recruits slept, Sloane stood outside the compound with Ortiz. The general looked toward the dark ridges beyond the range. "You think she's ready to lead this?" Ortiz shook his head slowly. "No one's ever ready for her kind of war." "Sir." Sloane nodded, hands behind his back. "Then she's perfect." Inside the barracks, Dana sat at her desk, writing in the same leather notebook. The page held only one sentence: "Precision is a discipline." She closed it carefully, the faint sound of wind slipping through the window. For the first time in years, she felt it again, the stillness before a shot, the wait before the storm. Meridian had begun, and the desert, once silent, was listening. Dawn stretched over the desert like a pale fire. The new recruits stood in a line on the range, gear strapped tight, rifles gleaming under the thin light. Captain Dana Whitford faced them, arms crossed, eyes unreadable behind clear lenses. "Today," she said, "you'll learn the first truth about precision. The wind doesn't care who you are." Her tone carried across the sand, measured, calm, not loud. "You can't beat it, you can only learn to move with it." 5 heads nodded. None of them fully understood yet, and she preferred it that way. Lesson 1 was always best learned through failure. The morning air was deceptively still. Beyond the firing berms, target plates waited 200, 300, and 600 meters out. Dana dropped a small red flag into the ground, the fabric barely stirring. "Forget the numbers," she said. "No wind meters, no spotters. Just your eyes and the way your skin feels." Harper Knox, the youngest, frowned. "We're supposed to guess. Guessing gets people killed," she replied. "Reading saves them." Her hand brushed a grain of dust off the rifle barrel. Then she stepped back. "Range is yours. Fire when you believe the air allows it." The first recruit fired immediately. The bullet cracked wide, slicing past the target. Dana didn't flinch. "You were too eager," she said. "Patience isn't waiting, it's timing." She turned to the second recruit. "Your turn." He hesitated, watching the flag. When he fired, the shot dipped low and hit sand. "Overcompensation," Dana noted. "Wind gives warnings, not orders." By the fourth shooter, the pattern was the same: miss, correction, miss again. She paced slowly behind them, hands clasped behind her back. "To the 5th, she said quietly. "If you're still thinking about the shot, you've already lost it." When Harper's turn came, he took a deep breath. His finger hovered on the trigger as the wind shifted. He fired, and the plate rang faintly. A perfect center hit at 300 meters. The sound made the others glance over, surprised. Dana only said, "Now prove it wasn't luck." The next shot went wide. Harper cursed under his breath. Dana knelt beside him, calm as stone. "You saw the air, but you didn't listen," she said. "The gust rose at your second heartbeat. You fired on the first." Her eyes flicked toward the horizon. "You don't chase calm. You create it." He nodded, jaw tight, understanding sinking in. Ortiz, watching from the tower, leaned toward Sloane. "She's breaking them down to build them back up," Sloane answered quietly. "That's what Meridian's supposed to do." By midday, sweat darkened every collar. The recruits reloaded in silence, learning to read the desert through rhythm instead of sight. Dana called for a new setup long-range test. 800 meters, partial crosswind. Harper steadied his rifle again, slower this time. He waded through 3 gusts before pulling. The plate chimed once dead center. Dana gave a short nod. "Now you're learning how to let the shot find its moment." Harper allowed himself the smallest smile. The others began improving, one by one. Not because of technique, but because her quiet presence forced them inward. Every word she said came from somewhere deeper than training manuals. After the session, they gathered under the shade of the supply truck. No one spoke until Dana finally did. "What did you learn?" the first recruit said. "The wind lies." She shook her head. It doesn't lie, it reveals. You're just not ready to understand it yet. She looked toward Harper. You... He thought for a moment. It's not the air I need to read. It's myself. Dana's lips curved slightly. Closer. Then she turned away, signaling the end of the exercise. That afternoon, Sloane arrived in a dust-coated vehicle. He walked toward her as she cleaned a rifle under the awning. "You've been at it since sunrise," he said. Dana didn't look up. "Discipline doesn't keep hours." "Sir." He studied her hands steady, methodical, no wasted motion. "Board wants a demonstration," he said finally. "Full evaluation tonight." Her hands paused. "At night. Targets at 1 mile." Sloane confirmed. "Minimal visibility. They'll decide funding based on the results." She nodded slowly. "Then we'll make the dark our ally." Sloane crossed his arms. "Are they ready?" "They won't be," she said. "But they'll try. And that's where the truth lives." He smiled faintly. "That's the old Kestrel talking." She finally looked up. "That part of me never left, sir. You just stopped calling for her." The words carried no bitterness, only quiet honesty. Sloane nodded once and walked away. Ortiz lingered nearby. Arms folded. "She's got them scared of her and addicted to learning from her," he said. Sloane glanced back. "Then she's exactly who I need." As evening approached, Dana gathered her team at the line. The desert turned amber, shadows stretching long across the firing berms. "This isn't about skill," she said. "It's about consistency under fear." The recruits checked their rifles. The temperature dropped, wind cutting sharp now from the east. They waited for her command. "Tomorrow, you'll shoot at night," Dana said. "No scopes, no instruments, just your mind and the breath you can't hear." Harper frowned. "Ma'am, that's suicide if we guess wrong." Her answer was calm. "Then don't guess." The range fell quiet again. Sloane watched from the edge, arms behind his back, as the recruits trained into the fading light. It wasn't skill that impressed him. It was how they mirrored her discipline without realizing it. By the time the sun disappeared behind the ridge, Dana stood alone at the center of the range. The targets shimmered faintly in the half-light, reflecting the last glow of day. She whispered something only the wind could hear. When Ortiz approached, she didn't turn. He asked softly, "You ever miss, Captain?" She smiled faintly. Only the things that stopped moving. The night crept in, slow and heavy. Floodlights flickered to life around the compound. Meridian's final test waited in the darkness beyond. Dana closed her notebook, tucking it beneath her arm. The words on the last page caught the dim light. "Precision is a discipline." She walked toward the barracks, the wind rising behind her again like applause only she could understand. The desert had turned black. The moon hid behind thin clouds, leaving Sage Ridge Range in shades of gunmetal and dust. Floodlights flickered once, then cut out by design. "Power down," Dana Whitford ordered softly. Her voice came through the earpieces like static, calm and controlled. "From here on, the dark decides who wins." 5 shooters crouched on the firing line, night vision lenses glowing faint green. Harper's breath fogged faintly inside his mask. Every sound boot's shifting. Fabric brushing felt too loud. "Target's 1 mile out," Dana said. "Red markers faint. Blue ones moving. You have 1 shot each." The recruits adjusted scopes that showed nothing but shifting darkness. Beyond the dunes, the wind murmured like a warning. General Sloane stood with Ortiz inside the command bunker. Only one screen worked, showing thermal outlines of the shooters. He said quietly, "If they miss, Meridian dies tonight." Ortiz crossed his arms. "If they hit, we'll never get another unit like this." Sloane didn't reply. His focus stayed fixed on Dana's silhouette, motionless at the center of the line. Downrange. A flare blinked once the signal. Dana raised her hand. "Set your rhythm. Count your pulse. The air will shift in 3. Her team froze, waiting. A gust tore across the valley, sand whispering over their helmets. She lifted her palm slightly. "That's 2. The wind dropped. A perfect breath of stillness. "Now." 5 rifles fired almost at once. Muzzle flashes ripped brief streaks of orange across the black horizon. The echoes rolled for seconds before fading to nothing. Silence followed, deep and absolute. Then a faint metallic ping broke through the comms. Ortiz leaned closer to the monitor. That's impact. Spotters confirmed 4 hits, 1 near miss. Sloan exhaled through his teeth, tension breaking like static. But Dana wasn't finished. Reset, she said. Second phase moving targets. 0 visibility. The recruits hesitated. Harper whispered, "Ma'am, there's no way we can." Dana cut him off gently. You've been training for this since dawn." The field went silent again. Through the darkness, automated drones began gliding across the valley floor, their motion barely visible. Dana's voice lowered. "Wait for the rhythm. It's never random." Harper gripped his rifle tighter. He tried to hear what she heard: the invisible pattern of pressure shifts, gusts, tiny vibrations. A heartbeat later, she spoke. "Now." 5 more shots cracked. The echo vanished into the night. A few seconds passed, then spotters confirmed 5 direct hits. The range erupted in cheers. Even Ortiz smiled, shaking his head. "She did it again." Sloan's voice stayed low. "No, they did. On the line." Dana's recruits lowered their rifles, panting, half in disbelief. She walked past each of them, quiet approval in her eyes. "You didn't fight the dark," she said softly. "You listened to it." Harper looked up. "Was that the final test?" Dana nodded once. "No. The real test is remembering how it felt to trust the silence." He grinned faintly. "Yes, ma'am." From the bunker, Sloan approached her. "Congratulations." "Captain," he said, "Meridian is cleared for full funding. They'll want a ceremony." Dana shook her head. "No ceremonies. We already had ours." He tilted his head. When she glanced at her recruits, still kneeling under the faint stars, when they hit what everyone said was impossible, Ortiz joined them, carrying a small case. He handed it to Sloan, who opened it carefully. Inside lay a single brass coin engraved with the words, "Discipline never dies." Sloan extended it toward Dana. She hesitated, then took it. The metal felt cold, solid, undeserved. "Keep it," he said. "Reminds you what you built." She looked at him quietly. "I didn't build it. I just showed them where to stand." Ortiz chuckled. "You make humility sound like a weapon." "It is," she replied, "if you know how to aim it." By dawn, the recruits were gone, reassigned to Meridian's first covert trial. The range lay empty again, except for Dana and Sloan. The morning light touched the hills, gold bleeding through the horizon. Sloan turned to her. "You could have had command years ago. Why now?" She kept her eyes on the rising sun. "Because back then, I wasn't done learning from ghosts." The answer was enough. He nodded, then handed her a sealed envelope. "New orders. You'll train the next phase in Arizona. They'll call it Phantom Division." Dana smiled faintly. "That name suits them." Sloan offered his hand. "Good hunting." "Captain Whitford." She shook it firmly, then looked past him to the sky. "Sir, you ever think the wind remembers us?" He frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" She half smiled. "Maybe it carries every shot that mattered." Then she turned away, walking toward the transport plane waiting on the runway. Her boots left perfect prints in the dust, one after another, fading into the light. The sun climbed higher, washing the desert in heat and silence. From her pocket, she drew the small leather notebook, flipping to the last page. 4 names stared back at her Wardak. 2016. Her thumb brushed across them. "Still teaching." She whispered, "Still here." She closed the book and looked once more toward the horizon. The engines of the plane rumbled, low and steady, pulling her back into duty. As the aircraft lifted, she pressed the coin into her palm, feeling its cold edge bite softly. Below, the range grew smaller, just lines of sand and faint echoes of gunfire. Above, the wind shifted again, tracing invisible paths through the air, and Dana Whitford, Kestrel 6 reborn, finally smiled. For the first time in years, she wasn't haunted by the ghosts of her aim. She was leading new ones into the light. And in that silent desert, precision had found its peace. If you enjoyed the story, consider sending a super chat to help bring more stories like this. Now, click on the video on the screen to hear another story that's just as powerful and captivating, with courage, sacrifice, and a choice that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about duty and justice.